I was cleaning my son's house when I found my daughter-in-law's journal. I opened it and read, "The old woman problem needs to be handled soon." I stayed quiet, packed my things, and left. The next morning, she called screaming, "Why are the locks changed and our bank account frozen?" I just smiled and said, "Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin." I was dusting the bookshelf in my son's study when the journal fell. I had been humming, a habit from my church days, moving the soft yellow cloth in careful, practiced strokes across the spines of Marcus's old college textbooks. The leather-bound book was a slim, expensive thing, tucked between a volume on business management and a biography of a president. It had never been there before. My cloth caught its edge, and it tumbled to the thick carpet, splaying open. I bent to pick it up, my knees protesting softly. I intended to close it and place it back. A good mother respects privacy, but my eyes, against my will, caught the sharp, angular script on the open page, a date from the previous week, and then the words, "The old woman problem needs to be handled soon." The air left my lungs. A cold, dense weight settled in my chest. My fingers, which had been so steady a moment before, felt numb. I did not sit. I did not gasp. I stood perfectly still in the beam of afternoon sun cutting through the window, the dust motes I had disturbed swirling around me like static. Old woman. In this house, there was only one. I read the entry. It was not an emotional rant. It was a list, a project plan. Point 1. Discuss assisted living options with Marcus. Frame it as concern. Point 2. Research market value of her condo. Point 3. Suggest a family meeting to talk about her future. The words were clinical, devoid of any affection or history. They were about an obstacle to be removed, a problem to be solved. Chloe's words, my daughter-in-law's handwriting. I closed the book. The soft thump of the cover was the loudest sound in the quiet room. I placed it back on the shelf, precisely where it had been. I adjusted it so its spine aligned with the others. Then I picked up my dusting cloth. I resumed my work. I dusted around the journal, over the very shelf that held it. My hands did not tremble. I made sure of that. I finished the shelf, then the desk, then the windowsill. I moved with a mechanical precision, my mind a blank, white noise. The humming had stopped. The only sounds were the whisper of cloth on wood and the distant, muffled sound of Chloe on a business call in the next room. Her voice was bright, professional, laced with a laugh. The same voice that had said, "Oh, Ellie, you shouldn't have." Just last night when I'd brought over a peach cobbler. The same face that had smiled without touching the eyes. I finished the room. I gathered my cleaning supplies, the spray bottle of vinegar and water I mixed myself, the microfiber cloths, the small handheld vacuum. I placed them all in the woven basket I carried from room to room. I took a final look. The study was perfect, orderly, a showroom for a successful life. My weekly effort had erased every trace of lived-in comfort. I walked out, closing the door with a soft click. I passed the living room where Chloe was now typing rapidly on her laptop. She looked up, her expression smoothing into that pleasant, vacant mask. "All done in there, Ellie. You're a lifesaver. I just don't know where the week goes." "It's clean," I said. My voice sounded normal to my own ears, flat and steady. "Marvelous. Marcus will appreciate it. He's got that big client meeting tomorrow. Atmosphere is everything, you know." She returned to her screen, dismissing me. I carried my basket to the large, spotless kitchen. I washed my hands at the sink, watching the water run over my fingers. I saw the faint age spots, the veins, the hands that had held a small boy, that had typed pay stubs for 30 years, that had cooked countless meals in this very house. Old woman hands. I dried them carefully on a towel. I hung the towel back on its bar, straight. I picked up my purse from the hook by the garage door. My movements were deliberate, each one a conscious decision. "Heading out, Ellie." Chloe called, not looking up. Yes, I have things to attend to. Okay. See you next week then. For the usual? The usual, the dusting, the vacuuming, the scrubbing of their bathrooms, the unpaid, unthanked labor of the old woman who lived for the privilege of serving their beautiful home. I had seen it as helping my son, easing his burden, a mother's love. Now I saw it as a schedule item in Chloe's plan, a utility soon to be phased out. I'll be in touch, I said. I let myself out the front door. The suburban afternoon was quiet, just the buzz of a lawnmower a few houses down. The air smelled of cut grass and blooming hydrangeas. I walked to my car, an older sedan I kept meticulously clean. I placed the basket of cleaning supplies in the trunk. I got into the driver's seat. I fastened my seatbelt. I started the engine. I did not look back at the house. I pulled out of the driveway and onto the tree-lined street. I drove the familiar route toward my own part of the city, my hands at 10 and 2 on the wheel. My face in the rearview mirror was calm, a mask of deep brown skin and silver hair, composed. Inside, a tectonic shift had occurred. The foundation of my world, my role as a mother, my place in my son's life, my understanding of the last 10 years, had cracked and fallen away into a cold, dark void. The pain was there, a sharp, hot pressure behind my eyes, but I did not cry. Crying was for a wound that was accidental. This was not an accident. This was a deliberate, calculated design. I had spent a lifetime being kind, being helpful, turning the other cheek. I had raised a good man, or so I believed. I had welcomed his chosen wife with an open heart, silencing every small, cold intuition. I had made myself small, useful, quiet to keep the peace, to be allowed in. The journal entry was a key. It had unlocked a door I had kept firmly shut inside myself. Behind that door was not more pain, but a chilling, clear-eyed clarity, a ledger of sacrifices, large and small, now rendered worthless, a map of my own foolishness. A strange calm began to seep through the shock, colder than the initial hurt. It was the calm of a problem identified, a threat assessed. I was a retired office manager. I understood systems. I understood paperwork. I understood that sentiment had no place in a negotiation or a war. Chloe had written a plan to handle her old woman problem. She saw me as a logistical issue, a simple equation of assets and liabilities. Very well. Two could play that game. I would handle the Chloe problem, but I would do it properly, not with tears or scenes, not with angry words to my son that would put him in the middle. I would do it with the tools I had always possessed: patience, attention to detail, and a thorough understanding of the facts. I drove the rest of the way home not as a wounded mother, but as a strategist returning to headquarters. The battle, I realized, had already been declared. I just hadn't known I was the enemy. Now I did. And I knew something else, with a certainty that hardened in my chest like concrete. I would win. Not to hurt my son, but to protect what was mine. To reclaim the dignity she had so casually tried to discard. She had written her plans in a pretty leather book. I would write mine in actions, and mine would be the last word. The key turned in my own lock with a heavier, more definitive sound than usual. I pushed the door open and stepped into the silence of my apartment. It was not the sterile quiet of Marcus's house, which felt like a held breath. This was a settled quiet, the sound of space that belonged entirely to me. I closed the door behind me and engaged the deadbolt. The solid thunk was a statement. I stood for a moment, my back against the door, and let my eyes travel. The living room was modest, crowded with the comfortable furniture I'd had for decades. A crocheted afghan was draped over the arm of the sofa where I'd left it. A stack of library books sat on the side table. Photographs of Marcus at various ages covered one wall. It was not a showplace. It was a home. Chloe had always called it cozy. A word I now understood was a polite synonym for small and outdated. But today, I did not see clutter. I saw evidence of a life lived. I did not see a lonely space. I saw a fortress. These were my walls. This was my territory. The realization was a physical sensation, a straightening of my spine. I placed my purse on the small table by the door and walked to the kitchen. I filled the kettle and set it on the stove. The ritual was automatic, calming. While the water heated, I went to my bedroom. In the back of my closet, on the high shelf, was a large, flat, plastic storage box. I brought it down, carrying it to the small dining table. I wiped the dust from its lid with my sleeve. The kettle whistled. I made a pot of tea, using the good china cup, not a mug. This was not a day for casual mugs. I brought the cup and saucer to the table and sat down. I lifted the lid of the box. Inside were files, neat, labeled, organized in alphabetical order. This was the archive of my practicality. Auto, title and maintenance. Condominium, deed and HOA. Health, insurance and directives. Marcus, education. Marcus, business. My hand hesitated over the last one. Then I pulled it out. It was thicker than the others. I opened it. The top document was a loan agreement from 12 years ago. Marcus had wanted to start his own marketing firm. He had passion, but no collateral. The banks had said no. He came to me, frustrated, on the verge of giving up. I had listened. I had then gone to my own bank. I had remortgaged this very condo, the one I owned outright after 30 years of payments, to secure a business loan for him. The loan was in his name, but my signature was on every page, my property guaranteeing his dream. Beneath that were the financial statements from the first 3 years. I had not interfered, but I had asked for updates. A mother's concern, I told him. He sent them willingly, proud of his progress. I saw the account numbers, the bank's name, the slow climb from red into black. There was another document, a house deed. 5 years ago, when Marcus and Chloe had bought their home, the mortgage was large. The bank required a larger down payment than they had. Chloe's parents had offered a small gift. Marcus, embarrassed, asked if I could help. I did not have cash, but I had equity. Again, my name was added to the deed as a co-signer, strengthening their application. "It's just a formality, Mom," Marcus had said, hugging me. "We'll refinance and get you off it in a year or 2. They never did. I sipped my tea. It was hot and bitter. I had never resented these things. They were investments in my son's happiness, in his stability. They were acts of love. Now I examine them with new eyes. They were not just kindnesses. They were leverage. I set the Marcus business file aside. I pulled out another, labeled Financial Joint Accounts. There was only one. When Marcus was in college, I had opened a joint savings account with him. I put a little money in each month so he would have a safety net for books or emergencies. After he graduated, he never removed my name. He would deposit occasional checks, saying it was easier than opening a new account. Over the years, it had evolved. Now, I saw from the most recent statement, it was used for household incidentals. Chloe had access. She had ordered new patio furniture from it last month. My name was still first on the account. My social security number was the primary. A cold, clear logic began to assemble itself in my mind, piece by piece, like a circuit board lighting up. Chloe saw me as a dependent, a liability soon to be shed. She did not know, Marcus had perhaps forgotten, that I was not a passenger in their financial life. I was a structural support beam. She planned to sell my condo. My name was on the deed. She planned to discuss assisted living. She used a bank account I could legally empty with a phone call. She wanted to remove me? She would first have to untangle herself from the systems I had helped build. The pain was still there, a dull ache beneath my ribs. But it was being compartmentalized, pushed into a drawer labeled later. Right now, I needed a blueprint. I took a notepad and a pen from the drawer. I wrote at the top, points of contact. 1. Ruth. 2. Bank. 3. Locksmith. Ruth had been my friend since our office manager days. She had gone to law school at night. She now ran her own small practice, focusing on elder law and estate planning. We had lunch once a month. She was the only person who ever asked me point blank if I was happy helping at Marcus's so much. I had brushed her off. Now I needed her professional mind. I looked at the clock. It was too late to call today. It would wait for morning. Precision required patience. I finished my tea. I organized the files back into the box, leaving the crucial ones on top. I returned the box to its shelf in the closet. The apartment felt different now. It was not just a refuge. It was a command center. Every book, every piece of furniture, every photograph was an asset I owned. She wanted to reduce me to an old woman problem. I would show her the full equation. That night, I cooked a simple dinner for one. I ate at my table, reviewing my notes. I did not turn on the television. The silence was full of purpose. I went to bed early. Sleep did not come easily, but when it did, it was not fitful. It was deep and still. I was no longer reacting. I was preparing. The next morning, I dressed with care. A simple linen dress, stockings, low-heeled pumps. I applied a little lipstick. I looked like a woman going to handle important business. Because I was. At exactly 9 a.m., I picked up my phone. I dialed Ruth's direct line. It rang twice. Ruth Henderson. Ruth, it's Ellie Banks. I need to schedule a consultation. Today, if possible. It's urgent. There was a brief pause on the line. Ruth knew my tone. Eleanor, are you all right? I will be, I said, but I need your help to get there. 11 o'clock, she said immediately. My office. I'll clear my lunch. Thank you. I hung up. I looked at my list. Point 1. Ruth. I drew a deliberate line through it. The plan was no longer an idea. It was in motion. The wood-paneled door to Ruth's office was exactly as I remembered. Solid dark oak with a frosted glass pane bearing her name in black lettering. I pushed it open at 5 minutes to 11. The reception area was small, warm, and smelled of lemon polish and old paper. Janine, Ruth's paralegal of 20 years, looked up from her desk and smiled, her eyes immediately sharpening with concern. Eleanor, go right in. She's expecting you. I nodded and walked to the inner door. I knocked once. Come. Ruth's office was a reflection of her. Orderly, intelligent, and without pretension. Bookshelves lined with legal volumes, a large, tidy desk, 2 comfortable client chairs. Ruth stood up from behind the desk. She was a tall woman, my age, with close-cropped gray hair and sharp, kind eyes behind practical glasses. She came around and took both my hands, her grip firm. Eleanor, she said, searching my face. Sit, tell me. I sat. I placed my purse on the floor beside me. I had brought the relevant files in a simple canvas tote. I did not open it yet. I met her gaze. Chloe is planning to have me declared incompetent, I said. My voice was flat, factual. She intends to sell my condo and put me in assisted living. She has written a plan. I found it. Ruth did not flinch. She did not express shock. She sat back in her chair, steepled her fingers, and her gaze turned analytical. You have this document? I have seen it. A leather journal in Marcus's study. I did not remove it. That would be unwise. But I remember the words. They were specific. They discussed timelines and methods. I see. Ruth picked up a pen. And Marcus? I believe he is unaware. The journal is Chloe's private thoughts. He is willfully blind to many things, but I do not think he is part of this operational planning. Ruth made a note. Good. That simplifies things legally and morally. What do you want, Eleanor? The question was the reason I was here. Ruth dealt in actionable goals, not sympathy. I want to secure my assets, I said. I want to remove my financial support from their household without warning. I want to create a situation where Chloe's plan is not only impossible, but where her own position becomes untenable. I want to do it legally, cleanly, and in a way that forces Marcus to see the truth. A faint, grim smile touched Ruth's lips. A strategic extraction and countermaneuver. All right, let's audit your positions. What do you hold? I opened my tote. I laid the files on her desk, one by one. The mortgage note for Marcus's business loan. My condo was the collateral. The loan is in his name, but the lien is on my property. Ruth scanned it. You are the guarantor. If you call this loan due, the bank will demand full payment from Marcus. If he cannot pay, they will foreclose on your condo. That is a nuclear option. It would destroy him financially and you would lose your home. We set that aside as a last resort. I nodded. That had always been a shield, not a sword. Understood. Next, the deed to their house. I am a co-signer. My credit and equity help them qualify. Ruth took the document. This is better. You are on title. You have an ownership interest. You cannot be removed without your signature. She cannot sell the house from under you, and she certainly cannot sell your condo, as you are the sole owner. She looked at me. This is a significant leverage point. What are your intentions regarding the house? I have no desire to live there or take it from Marcus. I want my name off of it, but on my terms, not as part of her scheme to isolate me. We can demand a quitclaim deed, force a refinancing to remove you. That would be a considerable financial stressor for them, given current rates. It is a legitimate legal pressure. She made another note. What else? The joint account. I passed her the most recent statement. My name is first. It was an account I opened for Marcus years ago. Chloe now uses it freely. She made a substantial purchase last month. Ruth's eyebrows rose. This is the cleanest tool. As a joint account holder with primary authority, you can freeze the funds or withdraw them. There is no legal barrier. It is your money as much as theirs. Freezing it would cause immediate logistical disruption. That is my preference, I said. A freeze, not a withdrawal. I don't want their money. I want to demonstrate control. Wise. Creates a crisis without theft. Legally impeccable. She tapped the statement. We can do this today. I will call the bank with you here. My presence as your counsel establishes the seriousness of the action and ensures the bank follows protocol. There is one more thing, I said. Physical access. To your condo? To their house. I have a key. I want it rendered useless. I want to change the locks on my son's home. Ruth was silent for a moment. That is a more aggressive physical step. You are on the deed, which gives you a property interest, but changing locks on an occupied residence can be seen as a provocative act. It is not an act of occupation. It is an act of revocation. I am revoking the access they have always taken for granted. I am revoking my role as unpaid domestic labor. The key is a symbol. I want it nullified. Ruth considered. We can do it legally. We will hire a bonded locksmith. I will send Janine with you as a legal witness representing my firm. She will explain to the locksmith that you are a co-owner authorizing a security upgrade. It will be done quickly, during the day when the house is empty. You will leave a note stating that the locks have been changed for security reasons and that you, as a co-owner, have the new keys. That note is critical. It establishes your right and frames the action as protective, not hostile. The plan crystallized in the space between us, solid and cold. It was no longer my private anger. It was a legal and tactical roadmap. The sequence, I said, first the bank call, freeze the joint account, then the locksmith. Execute both actions on the same day. The financial and physical lockdown must be simultaneous for maximum impact. After the dust settles, we formally serve notice regarding the house deed, demanding the quitclaim or refinance. That is the follow-up pressure. And Marcus? I asked, the question tight in my throat. Ruth's expression softened, but only slightly. Marcus will be caught in the crossfire. That is unavoidable. But the shock may be what he needs. You are not attacking him, Eleanor. You are removing the structures that allow his wife to attack you. He will have to choose which set of facts to believe. Your evidence is a journal and a series of legal documents. Hers will be hysterics. The evidence will win. I took a deep breath. The room felt very clear, very still. Then we proceed. Ruth picked up her phone. "Janine, please bring in the speakerphone and get me the direct line for the manager at First Mercantile Bank, the downtown branch." She looked at me. "Are you ready?" I looked at the files on her desk, the product of a lifetime of care. They were no longer just mementos, they were instruments. "Yes," I said. "I am ready." Janine brought in the phone. Ruth dialed. As it rang, I folded my hands in my lap. I did not feel like a vengeful mother. I felt like a board member authorizing a necessary, difficult restructuring. The emotion was there, buried deep, but it was not in charge. The plan was. The bank manager answered. Ruth identified herself and me. "We are calling today," she said, her voice crisp and professional, "to issue a formal instruction to freeze all activity on joint account number 479-8821, effective immediately. My client, Eleanor Banks, is the primary account holder. We are following up with a faxed letter of instruction on my firm's letterhead within the hour. Can you confirm the freeze is now in place?" The conversation continued, but I listened only to the key phrases. "Yes, confirmed. No exceptions. All debit cards declined. Require both signatures to reinstate." It was done. With a few sentences, the flow of money Chloe relied on for her casual spending had stopped. The first move was complete. Ruth hung up. Phase 1. Now for Phase 2. She turned to Janine. "Please call Metropolitan Locksmiths, the bonded service we use. Schedule an urgent call for 2 p.m. today at the Banks residence on Willow Lane. You will accompany Mrs. Banks. Use the standard co-owner authorization form. I will prep it now." Janine nodded and left. Ruth began typing on her computer. The printer in the corner hummed to life. I sat in the client chair watching the two professional women execute the plan we had built. The cold clarity in my chest warmed by a single degree. I was not alone. I had turned my problem into a case, and my friend into my counsel. The old woman problem was now a legal matter, and I was on the right side of the law. The authorization form from Ruth's firm felt substantial in my hands. It was printed on heavy, watermarked paper. Janine drove us in her sensible sedan. We did not speak much during the 20-minute drive to Willow Lane. "The locksmith will meet us there at 2:15, Janine said, checking the clock on her dashboard. "He has the work order. I'll handle the paperwork and verification." "Thank you, Janine." "It's my job, Eleanor. But for what it's worth, Ruth told me just enough. I'm glad you're doing this." I looked out the window at the passing streets. We were moving from my part of the city with its older buildings and cracked sidewalks into the zone of newer developments and manicured lawns. Each block felt like a step away from my own reality and into the stage set Chloe had constructed. Today, I was not a guest on that stage. I was a stagehand, and I was about to dismantle a crucial piece of scenery. We turned onto their street. The house looked the same. Perfectly painted, the lawn a uniform green, the hydrangeas a deliberate blue. The driveway was empty. Marcus would be at work. Chloe had a standing lunch and shopping afternoon with a friend on Mondays. Ruth had confirmed this schedule with a single phone call to a mutual acquaintance. The plan relied on precision. Janine parked at the curb. A white van with Metropolitan Locksmiths printed on the side was already waiting. A man in a uniform shirt got out, carrying a heavy metal toolbox. "Mrs. Banks?" he asked, looking between us. "I am Eleanor Banks. This is Janine Wright, my legal representative. We are the authorized parties for the lock rekey." Janine stepped forward, handing him the authorization form and a copy of the deed, highlighting my name. "As you can see, my client is a co-owner of the property. We are requesting a full rekey of all exterior entry points, front door, back door, and garage service door, with high-security deadbolts. Here is the existing key for access." She handed him my key. He examined the documents, nodded professionally, and took the key. "Standard procedure. I'll need to see some ID from you, ma'am," he said to me. I produced my driver's license. He compared the name to the documents, nodded again, and turned toward the house. "Should take about 45 minutes. "We'll wait here," Janine said. He walked up the path, used my key to unlock the front door, and propped it open with his toolbox. The sight of that open door, the interior I knew so well, sent a jolt through me. This was the threshold I had crossed countless times, always with a sense of purpose, of help. Today my purpose was different. I stayed by the car. I did not need to go inside. My presence was a formality. The sound of his work began, the metallic scrape of old locks being removed, the drone of an electric screwdriver. It was a loud sound in the quiet street. A neighbor across the way came out to get her mail. She saw me, waved tentatively. I raised my hand in a neutral acknowledgement. She looked at the locksmith's van, curiosity plain on her face, then went back inside. The gossip network would activate soon. That was acceptable. Janine leaned against the car, checking messages on her phone. She projected an air of bored professional duty. I stood straight, hands clasped in front of me, watching. Each thump and whir from the house was a step in the process, a removal, an installation. After 30 minutes, the locksmith came to the door. "All done, ladies. Want to test the new keys?" He handed me 2 sets. Each set had 3 keys, one for the deadbolt, one for the lower lock, one for the garage. They were cold and bright, not worn smooth like the old ones. I walked up the path. Janine followed. I slipped the first key into the new deadbolt on the front door. It turned with a smooth, heavy click, a solid, definitive sound. I turned the knob and pushed the door open. I tested the lower lock. Another click. The mechanism felt tight, new and unresisting. I closed the door, locked it, unlocked it again. The action was flawless. "They're good," the locksmith said. "High security. Those keys can't be copied at a hardware store. You need the card that comes with each set." I nodded. I handed one set to Janine for Ruth's files. The other set I placed in my purse. The old keys were now useless pieces of metal. The locksmith gathered his tools and loaded his van. He gave Janine a receipt. She signed it. With a wave, he drove away. We were alone again on the quiet street. The house was now sealed with my new authority. "The note," I said. Janine produced a simple cream-colored note card from her briefcase. I took it and a pen. I leaned against the hood of her car. I wrote 3 words, handled it. Ellie. I did not sign Mom. I did not offer an explanation. The note was a fact, not an opening for conversation. I walked back to the front door. I slipped the note between the door and the frame where it would be immediately visible. I did not use the knocker or tape. It was held in place by friction alone. I turned and walked back to the car. I did not look back. Janine started the engine. We pulled away from the curb. In the side mirror, I watched the house diminish. The white note card was a tiny pale spot against the dark green door, a period at the end of a sentence. "The account freeze is in place. The locks are changed. The first phase is complete," Janine said, stating the facts. "Yes, Ruth will wait for the reaction. Then she will initiate phase 2 regarding the deed." "I understand." We drove the rest of the way in silence. Janine dropped me off at my apartment building. "You did the right thing, Eleanor. It's going to get loud now, but you did the right thing." "Thank you for your help, Janine." I went upstairs. Inside my apartment, I placed the new set of keys on my kitchen table. They lay there, gleaming under the fluorescent light. They were not a symbol of access, but of control. I had changed the locks on my son's house. The magnitude of the action settled over me, not as guilt, but as a stark, simple reality. I made tea. I sat at the table, the keys beside me. I waited. The execution was over. Now came the consequence. I felt no anxiety, only a cold readiness. The trap had been set with legal documents and hardened steel. All that was left was for the quarry to walk into it. The phone, when it rang, would not be a surprise. It would be a confirmation. I sipped my tea and watched the afternoon light move across the wall. I was calm. The work was done. The morning after the locks were changed, I was watering the spider plant on my kitchen windowsill. The phone rang. The caller ID displayed Marcus and Chloe. I watched it ring 3 times. I set the watering can down. I picked up the phone. I pressed answer. Hello? The sound on the other end was not a voice at first. It was a sharp, ragged intake of breath, like someone who had been running. Then Chloe's voice, stripped of all its polished warmth, shrill and strained. Ellie, what have you done? I remained silent for a count of 2. Could you be more specific, Chloe? My key doesn't work. None of my keys work. I'm standing on my own front porch, and my card was declined at the grocery store. The bank said the account is frozen. What is this? What is going on? I could picture her. Designer suit, heels, probably holding a bag of gourmet groceries that now she couldn't pay for, stranded outside the beautiful house she commanded. I felt nothing. I see, I said. I see? Is that all you have to say? Did you do this? Did you freeze our account? Did you change our locks? Her voice climbed higher with each question. Yes, I said. The silence on the line was total. I imagine her mouth was open, her mind scrambling to process the single, simple affirmation. It did not compute. The old woman was not supposed to push buttons. She was supposed to have buttons pushed on her. You cannot do that, she finally shrieked. That is our money. That is our house. This is insane. I'm calling Marcus right now. I'm calling the police. You are welcome to call Marcus, I said, my voice level. As for the police, they will direct you to civil court. The account is a joint account. I am a joint holder. Freezing it is within my rights. The house deed lists me as a co-owner. Changing the locks for security is within my rights as a property owner. You're a co-signer. That's a formality. You don't live here. You don't get to make decisions. A formality with legal weight, I corrected. And I have made a decision. The decision is that you no longer have unrestricted access to my financial support or to a property that bears my name. Your support? She spat the word. You're a retiree on a fixed income. What support? You're a burden we've been carrying for years. There it was. The mask was off completely. The truth she had only written in her journal now screamed into the phone. It was ugly. It was also a gift. It was a recording I would not need to make, because the words were now etched into the air between us. Undeniable. A burden, I repeated, not as a question but as a statement of fact. Yes, and now you've gone senile and you're stealing from us. Marcus will see this. He'll have you declared incompetent so fast your head will spin. Her words were meant to wound, to panic me. They had the opposite effect. They confirmed every strategic choice Ruth and I had made. This was her play. Declare me incompetent. My preemptive moves had just made that play infinitely harder. Chloe, I said, cutting through her tirade. My tone was calm, almost conversational. You wrote a plan in your leather journal. You left it on the shelf in Marcus's study. I dusted around it last week. The line went dead quiet again. This silence was different. It was the silence of sheer, naked shock. I could almost hear the blood draining from her face. You read my private... You left it open, I said. The phrase was, the old woman problem needs to be handled soon. You had a list, selling my condo, discussing assisted living. I paused, letting each item hang in the digital space between us. It was a good plan, logically sound, but you made 2 mistakes. You had no right, she whispered, but the fury was now edged with something else. Fear. My first mistake, I continued, as if she hadn't spoken, was assuming I was only a problem to be handled, not a person with resources. My second mistake was leaving the evidence where the problem could read it. I'll deny it, she said, her voice regaining some of its steel. Marcus will never believe you. It's your word against mine. You're a confused old woman. Perhaps, I said, but the frozen account isn't confusion. It's math. The new locks aren't senility. They are hardware. You can explain those things to Marcus however you like. I have already explained my actions to my lawyer. All future communication on this matter should go through her. Her name is Ruth Henderson. I will text you her office number." "You can't do this!" The scream was back, raw and furious. "I already have," I said. Then I delivered the line I had practiced in my mind, the one that condensed my entire plan into a cold, perfect response to her journal entry. "You wanted the old woman problem handled, Chloe." So I handled it. I ended the call. I placed the phone face down on the counter. My hand was steady. I picked up the watering can and resumed tending to the spider plant. The green shoots were healthy, thriving. I focused on the simple task, the feel of the cool ceramic, the sound of the water soaking into the soil. A few minutes later, the phone buzzed again. Marcus. I let it go to voicemail. He would need to hear her version first. He would need to be steeped in her panic, her twisted narrative. The contrast, when he finally heard mine, would be starker. The call had gone exactly as anticipated. The hysterics, the accusations, the threats of incompetence. It was a script she had followed perfectly. My calm had been the trapdoor beneath her feet. She had fallen through into the legal and financial reality I had constructed. I finished watering the plant. I wiped the windowsill with a cloth. The sun was bright. I felt a clean, cold satisfaction. The first battle in this quiet war was over. The enemy was engaged, and she was already on the defensive, shouting from a position of weakness. The next move was Marcus's. I was ready for that, too. I had the facts. I had the law. And now I had her own furious, recorded confession ringing in my ears. It was not evidence for a court, but it was the truth. And sometimes the truth is all you need to win. He came that evening. I heard the car door shut with more force than necessary outside my building. I was at my small dining table reviewing the documents Ruth had couriered over, copies of everything. I did not get up to look out the window. I listened to the heavy footsteps on the stairs, the familiar rhythm now rushed and angry. The knock on my door was not a request. It was a demand. I rose, smoothed my dress, and opened the door. Marcus stood there, still in his work shirt, the tie loosened. His face was a storm of confusion and anger. He looked past me into my apartment as if expecting to see evidence of chaos, of madness. "Mom!" The word was an accusation. "Marcus, come in." He stepped inside but did not move further into the room. He closed the door behind him and leaned against it, crossing his arms. "What is going on? Chloe is hysterical. She says you froze our bank account. She says you changed the locks on our house. She says you've lost your mind." He spoke in a rapid, low voice, straining for control. "I have done those things," I said. I walked back to the table and sat down. I gestured to the other chair. "Sit down, son." He did not sit. "Why? Why would you do that? Do you have any idea the position you've put us in? I had to leave work early. I had to get a locksmith to let us into our own house, a locksmith you hired. We had to pay him with a credit card because our checking account is frozen. Chloe couldn't even buy groceries." "I am aware," I said. "You are aware?" he repeated, his voice rising. "That's all you have to say? Mom, this isn't like you. Chloe thinks you might be having some kind of episode, a mental break. We're worried about you." There it was, the framing, the first move in Chloe's counter-strategy, the confused old woman. I felt a cold spike of disappointment, but I had expected it. "I am not confused, Marcus. I am acting with full clarity. Your wife knows why I have done these things. Did she tell you about her journal?" His expression shifted, the anger faltering for a second, replaced by genuine bewilderment. "Her journal? What does that have to do with anything? She writes in it. It's private." "It is," I agreed, "and in it she wrote a plan to handle what she called the old woman problem. That would be me. The plan involved selling my condo and discussing assisted living options with you. She left it open on the shelf in your study. I read it while I was dusting." Marcus stared at me, his arms slowly uncrossed. That's ridiculous. Chloe would never. She loves you. She's always saying how much she appreciates your help. Does she?" I asked. My voice was quiet. Or does she appreciate free cleaning and errand running? There is a difference, Marcus. One is affection, the other is utility. So because of some misunderstanding, some sentence you took out of context, you decide to attack our finances? To lock us out of our home? His anger was returning, fueled now by defensiveness. He was choosing his narrative, and it was the easier one. His mother was unstable. It was not one sentence. It was a list. It was a cold, logistical plan. And my response was not an attack. It was a securing of assets. The joint account is as much mine as yours. The house has my name on the deed. I secured them. You took them. I protected them, I corrected, from someone who has documented her intent to remove me from my home and my autonomy. He ran a hand over his face, the frustration evident. Mom, even if she wrote something foolish, that's not a reason for this. We could have talked. You could have come to me. And what would you have done, Marcus? I asked. The question hung in the air. He opened his mouth, but no answer came. He would have placated me. He would have talked to Chloe. She would have given a tearful, reasonable explanation. He would have believed her, and nothing would have changed, except I would have been marked as a troublemaker. He knew it. I saw the knowledge flicker in his eyes. This is insane, he muttered, but the conviction was bleeding out of his voice. I let the silence stretch. Then I asked the question I had prepared, the one Ruth and I had agreed would be the pivot. I kept my eyes on his. Did you ever wonder why your business loan went through, Marcus? He blinked, thrown by the sudden shift. What? My business? That was 12 years ago. What does that have to do with this? The banks said no. You had no collateral. You came to me, ready to give up. Do you remember? Of course I remember. You talked to someone. You helped. I did not talk to someone, I said. I went to my bank. I remortgaged this condo. I used my home, the one I owned free and clear after 30 years of payments, as collateral for your loan. My signature is on every page. If your business had failed, they would have taken my home. The color drained from his face. He knew the contours of the story, but I had never laid out the mechanism so starkly. He had been so focused on his own struggle, his own success, that he had allowed the details to blur into a generic, "Mom helped." And when you and Chloe bought your house, I continued, my tone still factual, the bank wanted a larger down payment. Your parents-in-law gave a gift. I had no cash, but I had equity. So my name went on the deed as a co-signer to strengthen your application. You said it was a formality. You said you'd refinance. You never did. I gestured to the papers on my table. These are not weapons I fashioned today, Marcus. These are structures I built for you years ago, out of love. Chloe's plan was to dismantle them and discard me. My plan was simply to reassert my ownership, to remind everyone involved of the foundation this family is actually built on. It is not built on her designer furniture. It is built on my signature. He sank into the empty chair across from me. He looked at the documents, then at my face. The anger was gone, replaced by a dawning, horrified comprehension. He was beginning to see the chessboard, and he was realizing his wife had been playing a different game in a room he never entered. She called you a burden, I said softly. On the phone today. She said you've been carrying me for years. He winced, as if struck. If she didn't mean it. She was upset. She meant it, I said. It was the truth she has always believed. And you allowed that belief to exist by never correcting the record, by letting her think my contributions were trivial, by letting her treat me as staff. He had no rebuttal. He sat in my quiet apartment, in the home he now understood was the literal guarantee of his own success, and he saw the scale of his blindness. It was a painful, necessary sight. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice hollow. "Now," I said, "you and Chloe have a meeting with me and my lawyer tomorrow at 10 a.m. in her office. We will discuss the future of these financial entanglements, and we will discuss the journal. You will see the evidence for yourself. After that, you will have choices to make." I handed him a card. Ruth's office address was printed on it. He took it mechanically. "You should go home, Marcus, talk to your wife, hear her version again, then decide what you believe." He stood up, unsteady. He looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. He did not see a sweet, fading old woman. He saw a strategist, a creditor, a mother who had finally called in a debt of respect. He left without another word. I listened to his footsteps retreating down the stairs, slower and heavier than when he arrived. I gathered the papers into a neat stack. The reckoning had begun, not with a scream, but with a quiet question about a loan. It had been enough. I could see it in his eyes. The first brick in the wall of his willful ignorance had crumbled. The rest would follow. I arrived at Ruth's office at 9:45 the next morning. I wore a dark blue suit I hadn't taken out in years. It still fit. Janine greeted me with a nod and showed me into the conference room adjacent to Ruth's office. It was a small, windowless space with a polished table and 4 chairs. Ruth was already there, arranging files. "They will be here in 10 minutes, she said without looking up. "I have set the recording device for our protection and the record." She gestured to a small, unobtrusive digital recorder in the center of the table. "You are ready?" "I am. Remember, you are the client. I will facilitate. You will present the facts. Let the documents do the talking." I took the seat facing the door. Ruth sat at the head of the table. We did not speak further. I listened to the clock on the wall tick away the minutes. My pulse was steady. At exactly 10 o'clock, Janine opened the door. Marcus entered first. He looked tired, his clothes slightly rumpled. His eyes met mine, then darted away. Chloe followed. She was impeccably dressed in a cream-colored sheath dress, her makeup perfect, but her posture was rigid. Her eyes swept the room, lingering on the recorder with a flash of contempt before landing on me. She did not sit. Marcus pulled out a chair for her. She ignored it for a moment, then sat down stiffly. "Thank you for coming," Ruth began, her voice neutral and professional. "I am Ruth Henderson, attorney for Eleanor Banks. This is a consultation to discuss matters of shared financial interest and property rights. This conversation is being recorded for accuracy. Do you consent?" "This is absurd," Chloe said, her voice tight. "Do you consent to the recording?" Ruth repeated, unblinking. "Fine, whatever." "Marcus?" Ruth asked. "Yes," he said quietly. "Proceed," Ruth said, turning to me. I opened the folder in front of me. I did not look at Chloe. I addressed Marcus. "You asked for an explanation. I will provide one. It begins with this." I slid a single sheet of paper across the table toward him. It was a photocopy. The sharp, angular handwriting was unmistakable. The date, the heading, points to address. And the first line, "The old woman problem needs to be handled soon." Marcus picked it up. His face went pale as he read. His hand trembled slightly. He read the listed points: assisted living discussions, condo valuation, family meeting. "This is a private journal," Chloe snapped. "That is stolen material. It's inadmissible. It's a violation." "It is a photocopy of a document that was left in open view," Ruth stated. "No theft occurred. We are not in a court of law. We are in a fact-finding meeting. The document is relevant to explain my client's subsequent actions." Marcus looked from the paper to Chloe. "You wrote this?" "It was taken out of context." Chloe's composure cracked. "It was just brainstorming. Worry. She's getting older, Marcus. We have to think about these things. It's responsible." "You called my mother a problem to be handled," Marcus said, his voice low and strained. He was still holding the paper. "It's a figure of speech, and look how she's reacted. She's proven my point. She's unstable. She's frozen our money and locked us out of our home." I waited for her to finish. Then I spoke, my eyes still on Marcus. "When I read that, I had a choice. I could have confronted you emotionally. I chose instead to secure the assets that were under threat. My assets. The assets that, historically, have also been yours." I slid a second document across the table. It was the highlighted deed with our 3 names. "The house. I am a co-owner. Changing the locks was a security measure to protect a property in which I hold legal interest. The note I left said, 'Handled it.' I was referring to the security concern. I have the new keys here." I placed them on the table. "You are welcome to them as fellow owners. The locks were not changed to exclude you, but to establish that access is a shared privilege, not a unilateral right." Chloe stared at the keys as if they were poisonous. I slid a third document forward, the bank statement for the joint account, with recent transactions circled in red. "This account, it was opened by me for Marcus. My name is primary. Your wife used it to purchase patio furniture last month. Given the documented intent to dispossess me, freezing the account was a prudent measure to protect the funds. The freeze can be lifted with the agreement of all parties once the underlying threat to my financial independence is resolved." Marcus was looking at the documents, then at Chloe, then at the photocopy. The pieces were connecting in his mind. The cold logic of her journal entry versus the cold logic of my response. "You see," Chloe said, her voice desperate now. "She's been planning this. She's twisted everything. She's trying to turn you against me with paperwork." "The paperwork is the foundation, Chloe," I said, looking at her directly for the first time. "You plan to use paperwork, medical evaluations, financial assessments, to remove me. I use the existing paperwork to prevent that. You see it as an attack. I see it as a defense. The difference is intent. My intent was self-preservation. Yours was disposal." She had no answer. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The truth, presented in a quiet conference room under the unblinking eye of a recorder, was inescapable. Ruth spoke into the silence. "Moving forward, we have 2 primary issues. The joint account can be unfrozen by mutual agreement, or it can be closed and the funds distributed proportionally. Regarding the house, my client is willing to sign a quitclaim deed to remove her name, on the condition that you refinance the mortgage within 60 days to assume full responsibility. If you cannot, we will need to discuss alternative solutions, including a potential sale of the property to divide the equity." "You can't force us to sell our home," Chloe whispered. "As a co-owner, she can petition the court for a partition sale," Ruth said calmly. "It is rarely pleasant. The refinance is the cleaner option." Marcus finally put the photocopy down. He looked crushed. "Mom, I didn't know." "I know you didn't," I said. My voice was not gentle, but it was not harsh. It was factual. "But your not knowing allowed this to happen. Your not seeing allowed her to believe I was a burden you carried instead of the scaffolding that held you up. That ends today." I stood up. The meeting was over. I had said what I came to say. I had shown the evidence. The rest was their problem to solve. Ruth will provide you with the formal proposals in writing. You can contact her with your decision. I gathered my copies of the documents, leaving the originals with Ruth. I did not look at either of them again. I walked out of the conference room, through the reception area, and into the hallway. I did not hear shouting or crying. I heard only a heavy, stunned silence behind me. The leather-bound truth had been presented. It was no longer a secret. It was now a fact in their marriage, a third entity in the room. Some truths are solvents. They dissolve the glue that holds false arrangements together. I had just poured a full vial onto the foundation of theirs. Now I would wait for the collapse. I left Ruth's office and did not go home. I went to the community center on Elm Street. It was Wednesday, which meant the senior social hour was just beginning. I needed the noise of ordinary life. the sound of people who knew me as Ellie, not as a problem or a tactical operator. I poured myself a cup of weak coffee from the large urn and took a seat at a round table where two women from my old church were already sitting, Gloria and Patricia. They were deep in conversation but looked up with warm smiles. "Ellie, we haven't seen you in weeks. Too busy with that son of yours?" Gloria asked, patting the empty chair next to her. "Something like that," I said, sitting down. "Things have been eventful." Patricia leaned in, her eyes keen. "Eventful how? I heard a little something from my niece. She works at First Mercantile, you know, downtown branch. The gossip network was faster than the internet." I sipped my coffee. "Did you?" "She said there was a big fuss yesterday, a freeze on an account, authorized by an Eleanor Banks with a lawyer on the line. That's you, isn't it? Everything all right, honey?" This was the moment. I could deny, deflect, or I could use the tool Chloe had never understood, the court of public opinion, governed by sympathy and shared history. "It's a long story," I said, letting my shoulders slump just a fraction, not in defeat, but in weary resignation. "My daughter-in-law, she had some plans for me. Plans I didn't agree with. I had to protect myself. It got legal." Gloria's hand flew to her chest. "What kind of plans?" I gave them the bare, unadorned facts, not the journal, but the intent. She was talking about selling my condo, putting me in a home, I found out, so I secured what's mine. The account was joint. The house has my name on it. I just made it official. The two women exchanged a look that spoke volumes. It was a look of righteous indignation, of shared understanding. They were women of my generation. They knew the value of what we'd built and the sting of being taken for granted. "That Chloe," Patricia said, her voice low and disapproving, "always did put on airs, acting like she's doing you a favor letting you clean that big house." "I knew it." Gloria nodded. "A child who doesn't respect their elders has a hollow heart. And Marcus? Where was he in all this?" "He's learning," I said simply. "It's a painful lesson." That was all I said. I did not badmouth, I did not embellish. I stated the situation and let their own moral calculus do the rest. By the time I left the community center an hour later, the story was already weaving itself into the fabric of our community's knowledge. Ellie Banks's daughter-in-law tried to put her away, and Ellie, smart as a whip, lawyered up and stopped it cold. It was a satisfying narrative. It was also true. The next day, I kept my standing appointment at Lucille's beauty parlor. Lucille had done my hair for 30 years. The shop was a hub. As I sat in the chair, the cape around my neck, the familiar chemical smell in the air, the conversation flowed around me. So I heard she was locked right out of her own house. "Froze the money, honey. Froze it solid. Serves her right for being greedy." Marcus must be beside himself, poor man, caught between two strong women. Lucille met my eyes in the mirror as she sectioned my hair. "You caused quite a stir, Ellie Banks. The phone's been ringing off the hook." "I didn't mean to cause a stir," I said. "I just meant to keep a roof over my head." "And you did," she said firmly, snapping her gum. "Anybody tries to mess with you, they get what's coming. This is a good town. We remember who's who." The support was a tangible thing. It came in the form of casseroles left at my door with notes that said, "Thinking of you." It came in invitations to lunch, to card games, to church events. My social calendar, once sparse, began to fill. I was not a pitied figure. I was a respected one. I had handled my business. Chloe's social landscape, I learned through the same network, underwent the opposite change. Her usual lunch group suddenly had scheduling conflicts. Invitations to the neighborhood book club and garden party did not arrive. At the upscale grocery store, women who used to stop and chat with her now gave tight, polite smiles and moved on. She was not being overtly shunned. She was being quietly, effectively isolated. Her perfect facade had developed a visible crack, and in our world, a crack like that revealed a flaw too deep to ignore. People took sides. They sided with the mother, the elder, the one who had been wronged. Marcus called me 3 days after the meeting. His voice was hollow with exhaustion. "She's at her parents' house," he said. I'm at a hotel. We're taking some time." "I'm sorry it came to that, Marcus." "Are you?" he asked, not with accusation, but with genuine curiosity. I considered. "I'm sorry for your pain. I am not sorry for my actions. They were necessary." He was quiet for a moment. "The things she said, Mom, after the meeting, the things she called you, it was like I didn't know her at all." "You saw the person she is when the performance ends," I said. "It's not a pleasant sight. I'm going to refinance the house. Get your name off the deed. Ruth sent the papers. I'll sign them. The account, we can close it. Split what's left." That sounds like a reasonable path forward. "I need some time to think about everything." "Take all the time you need," I said, and I meant it. I hung up. The unraveling was proceeding according to its own logic. Chloe was socially exposed and maritally estranged. Marcus was in the painful process of awakening. My position, once so precarious, was now secure, fortified by law and by community. I looked around my cozy, cluttered apartment. It was no longer just a fortress. It was a headquarters of a life reclaimed. The ripples from the stone I had thrown were still spreading, washing away the false structures and leaving the truth exposed. It was a quiet victory, witnessed not by a courtroom, but by a whole town. And in the end, that was the more powerful judgment. He came to my apartment on a Saturday morning, 2 weeks after our meeting at Ruth's office. I saw him through the peephole, standing in the hallway, his hands in his pockets. He looked like he hadn't slept. I opened the door. "Mom." "Come in, Marcus." He stepped inside. He didn't pretend to look around. His focus was entirely on me. "Can we talk?" "We can. Sit down." I gestured to the sofa. I took the armchair. I did not offer tea. This was not a social call. He sat on the edge of the cushion, leaning forward, his elbows on his knees. He looked at the floor for a long moment, gathering his words. "I've signed the refinance papers. The bank has approved it. In 30 days, your name will be off the house deed. The joint account is closed. Your half of the funds have been transferred to your personal account, as Ruth specified." "Thank you for handling that," I said. He nodded, then he took a deep, shuddering breath. "I am so sorry, Mom. More sorry than I can possibly say. I was blind. I was selfish. I let her create a world where you were less than you are. I enjoyed the help. I enjoyed the peace. I didn't want to see what it cost you. I failed you." The apology was not rushed. It was heavy, each word weighed with genuine remorse. He had clearly practiced it, lived with it, and now he delivered it without expectation. "I accept your apology, Marcus." He looked up, surprised, as if he had expected more resistance. "I accept it because I believe you mean it," I continued. "But acceptance is not the same as returning to what was. Things cannot go back to the way they were." "I know," he said quickly. "I don't expect that." "Good. Then here are my conditions." My voice was calm, but it held the unyielding quality of a judge pronouncing sentence. "First, I will no longer be unpaid help in your home. I am your mother, not your housekeeper. If I visit, it will be as a guest. Second, my finances are my own. They are permanently separate from yours. No more joint accounts, no more guarantees. My assets are for my security and my legacy. Third, you will respect my autonomy. You will not make plans for me or allow anyone else to make plans for me without my direct, informed consent. Do you understand these conditions?" He listened intently, nodding. "Yes, I understand. I agree to all of it." "This is not a negotiation. These are the terms of our continued relationship." "I know," he said, "and they're fair. More than fair." The air in the room shifted. The formalities were concluded. The tension bled out of his shoulders, replaced by a profound weariness. "I'm in therapy," he said, almost to himself. Started last week. I have a lot to unpack about me, about the kind of man I let myself become. That is a good step, I said. My tone softened, but only a degree. This was still a clinical assessment. Chloe and I are separated. She's filed for divorce. It's amicable, if you can call something that destroys your life amicable. She just wants out. I think she can't stand to be in this town anymore. Everyone knows. I did not comment on that. It was a consequence, not a tragedy. He looked around my apartment, really seeing it for the first time in years. This place is good for you. It's you. It is, I agreed. Then I reached into the pocket of my cardigan. I pulled out a single silver key on a plain ring. I held it out to him. He stared at it, confused. What's this? A key. To here? No, I said. To my new condo. I closed on it yesterday. It's in the renovated building on the park. Top floor, a view of the trees. I used the money from the closed account and a small withdrawal from my investments. It's mine, free and clear. His mouth opened slightly. He looked from the key to my face, comprehension dawning. I was not giving him access to my refuge. I was giving him a token, a symbol of a new kind of trust. It was not the key to a house he took for granted. It was a key to a place he had no claim over, offered as a privilege. You're moving? In a month. This place served me well, but it's time for an upgrade, on my terms, with my money. I placed the key in his palm. This means you are welcome in my home, as a guest, as my son, but on the new terms. You will call before you come. You will not let yourself in unless I ask you to. You will respect my space. This key is a reminder of that. He closed his fingers around the key. His eyes grew bright. He understood the magnitude of the gesture. It was not forgiveness in the emotional sense. It was a practical, concrete restart, a new set of rules symbolized by a new piece of metal. Thank you, Mom. You're welcome. He stood up. I stood up. He hesitated, then opened his arms. I stepped into the hug. It was different from any hug we had shared in a decade. It was not the hug of a child seeking comfort, or a man perfunctorily embracing his mother. It was the hug of two adults, one who had been humbled and one who had reclaimed her power. It was firm. It was respectful. There was love in it, but it was a clear-eyed love, without the fog of obligation. He let go first. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, a boyish gesture that made him look young again. I'll let you know how the move goes. If you need help, I will hire movers, I said, but I will let you know when I'm settled. You can come for dinner. He nodded, a real smile touching his lips for the first time. I'd like that. He left, the new key clutched in his hand. I listened to his footsteps, lighter now, going down the stairs. I looked at my old apartment. It had been a fortress, then a command center. Soon it would be a memory. I had my new keys. I had my new terms. I had my son back, not as a dependent, but as a man who was finally learning to see me. The vengeance was complete. What remained was the architecture of a better, truer life, and I had built it myself. 6 months after I handed Marcus the key, I was on my knees in the community garden plot, my hands buried in warm soil. The afternoon sun was strong on my back. I was planting tomato seedlings, carefully spacing them along the trellis. Ruth was on the next plot over, complaining loudly about the aphids on her green beans. I swear, Ellie, they're throwing a party over there, a rave. I'm going to have to call in an airstrike. Try the soapy water spray first, I said, pressing soil around the base of a seedling. Less collateral damage. Gloria, from 2 plots down, waved a trowel. I told you, Ruth, but you never listened to me. The sound of our bickering and laughter mixed with the buzz of insects and distant traffic. This was my Tuesday routine. My hands were dirty, my old sun hat was pulled low, and I felt a deep, uncomplicated contentment. I heard footsteps on the gravel path. I looked up, shielding my eyes with the back of my wrist. It was Marcus. He was wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, a look I hadn't seen on him in years. He carried a paper bag. "Hey, Mom, Ruth, Gloria." "Well, look who it is," Gloria called out. "Come to get your hands dirty." "If my mom will let me," he said, stopping at the edge of my plot. I sat back on my heels. "There are gloves in my basket, and don't crush the seedlings. They're delicate." He smiled, a real one that reached his eyes. He fetched the gloves and knelt beside me. He began to work, following my silent direction, placing the next seedling into the hole I had dug. We worked in comfortable quiet for a while, the familiar sounds of the garden around us. "How's the new place?" he asked after a few minutes. "Quiet. The light in the morning is worth every penny. You should come for coffee one day, on the balcony." "I'd like that." He tamped down soil. "I'm in an apartment now, just a rental. It's small. It's good." "That's a fine place to start," I said. "The divorce is final next week," he said, his voice neutral. He was stating a fact, not seeking sympathy. "She moved back to her home state. Took a job there. It's cleaner this way." I nodded. I did not ask for details. They were not my business. The consequence had occurred. The problem had been handled, just not in the way she had envisioned. "Therapy is hard," he continued, focusing on the plan in front of him. "But it's good. I'm learning. About a lot of things. Learning is never wasted time," I said. He finished with the seedling and sat back. He pulled the paper bag toward him. "I brought you something. For the new place." He took out a small potted herb plant. "Basil. For your balcony. You always said nothing beats fresh basil." I took the pot. The leaves were a vibrant green, fragrant when I brushed them with my fingers. It was a simple, thoughtful gift. No strings, just basil. "Thank you, Marcus. It's perfect." He looked around the garden, at the thriving plots, at Ruth now triumphantly spraying her beans, at Gloria singing softly as she weeded. "You've built a good life here, Mom." "I have," I agreed. "It's my own." He understood the meaning. He did not flinch from it. "I'm glad." We finished planting the rao. He helped me water them in, using the old watering can I kept there. We cleaned our tools together at the communal sink, scraping mud from trowels. The sun was beginning to dip, casting long shadows. "I should let you get back to your friends," he said, pulling off his gloves. "Come for dinner next Sunday. I'll make that pasta you like, with the fresh basil." "I'll be there," he said. He leaned in and kissed my cheek, a dry, gentle kiss. Then he turned and walked back down the path, his stride easy. I placed the basil plant with my other things. Ruth came over, wiping her hands on her trousers. "He looks better," she observed. "He's getting there." "And you?" she asked, giving me one of her direct looks. I looked at my garden plot, the neat rows of seedlings, the stakes for the beans, the rich, dark earth. I looked at my friends nearby, packing up their tools, chatting. I felt the sun-warmed skin on my arms, the pleasant ache in my knees from kneeling. I thought of my quiet, sun-filled condo with its locks that only I controlled. "I am exactly where I am supposed to be," I said. Ruth nodded, satisfied. She looped her arm through mine as we walked toward the gate. "Good. Now, are you going to help me figure out what to do about these damned aphids or not?" I laughed. It was a free, easy sound. We walked out of the garden together, leaving the thriving plants behind us, ready for tomorrow's sun. The work was never really done, but now it was my work in my soil, and that made all the difference.